And before this video begins, I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asban Team level patron, Fallon Cortez. Thank you for supporting the channel. We're getting towards the end of October, and you know what that means. Spooky season is in full swing. And the scariest ghost of all is this channel's success. Given the eerie chill in the air and the unmistakable mid-October atmosphere, I thought it would be fitting to take a look at one of Doctor Who's many haunted house episodes, Knock Knock. In previous years we had creepy children's homes, terrifying statues in an abandoned house, a cosmic love story in a haunted mansion, and whatever Ghostlight was. Knock Knock tries to take things in a slightly different direction, seeing companion Bill and her new roommate snag a tenancy that's too good to be true, only for the creepy old house to be a creepy old house with bugs in the walls killing people. It's all a bit Goosebumps. The first 3 episodes of Series 10 were very practical, following a traditional structure of introducing the core concepts of the show. But Knock Knock is the first big step into the rest of the series, finally opening the doorway to Doctor Who's usual exciting and varied storytelling. But is it good? Well, as always, that's what I'm here to find out. So, viewers beware, you're in for a scare, because it's time to step into the world of Knock Knock.
Oh, it's freaky Scooby-Doo house.
One of the most persistent storylines in modern Doctor Who is the difficulty of a companion balancing their old, normal life with their new, exciting time and space one. Right from the beginning of Knock Knock, it's clear that this episode wants to explore that well-trodden yet fertile ground as we follow Bill on her hilariously terrible attempts at finding a place to live with her new uni friends, having decided to move out of her foster home and take that big scary step of more independent living. I really enjoy the quick comedic montage of these terrible student digs. It's great comedy and a nice way to establish a sense of the episode being more like a slice of life narrative than the previous 3, setting up a much more casual tone before the horror elements eventually kick in later. Instead of fighting Daleks, omnipresent puddle women, or sentient emoji nanobots, Bill has to deal with the scariest creature of them all, the UK housing economy. Yeah, I can relate. I do really enjoy how grounded this short sequence is, with all the absurd yet realistic housing options. I mean, in some parts of London, you'd need to win the lottery just to live in a broom cupboard for a month. It's a really strong, light-hearted and comedic intro to the episode, but I just don't like the use of Little Mix. Instant F rank right there, absolutely unforgivable. Of course, Bill and her would-be roommates are now in a bit of a funk as to what to do, because they're all out of options. But of course, that's exactly when Poirot shows up to offer them a cheap contract to the most obviously haunted house possible. Gee, what could possibly go wrong here? Jokes aside, I do really like how apprehensive Bill is at this too good to be true offer. It suggests she's already learned a lot from her time with the Doctor, and she's a lot more cautious than she otherwise would be. After all, there's always a catch with these things.
Yeah, but why is it so cheap?
However, any caution is short-lived as she still signs the contract anyway, somehow skipping over the subsection stating that they can legally be absorbed into the walls and killed. See, you've really got to read the fine print these days. I really like the optimistic feel at the start of the episode, Bill meeting these other students she's having to get to know, with all of them sharing a sense of excitement at this incredible house they can't wait to explore. Like I mentioned earlier, it's a slice of normal life a lot of viewers can connect with and relate to in some form or another, and all of their character interactions feel really authentic and it humanises them so well, rather than just being disposable horror movie victims, although they are that as well. Their banter and interpersonal dynamics feel very real, with them each having distinct personalities even if they aren't actually fleshed out all that much. It's never exactly easy to get you to care about a group of side characters who pretty much all die within 10 minutes, but I do think Knock Knock does it well, especially with characters like Harry and Shireen, who are the only ones to last more than 5 minutes. So we warm to them over the course of the episode and it gives us a sense of stakes to the narrative. And of course, these character interactions are made even better with the unwelcome clinginess of the 12th Doctor, who initially just shows up to help Bill move her things, but immediately clocks a bad vibe about the house and decides to stick around to investigate.
Why are you still here?
It's really fun, him either completely missing or outright refusing to acknowledge her attempts to move him on so she can settle into normal life. Bill clearly wants independence, especially because the Doctor just doesn't fit in with the housemates, considering he's an over 2,000-year-old alien with very poor social skills. It leads to an entertaining early dynamic as the Doctor and Bill fight this tug of war of sorts, like when he invites himself in for Chinese and forces everyone to listen to Bill's music.
I love this.
All giving him an excuse to hang around and investigate, with the usual hijinks and awkward humour occurring.
Is that Chinese food? I love Chinese.
Again, this is a very run-of-the-mill storyline for modern Doctor Who, the companion insisting that there is no big adventure, only for the Doctor to insist there is and then be proven right. And you can't really blame him. From the moment the students enter their house, they can't help but notice unsettling details like the creaking, the dodgy wallpaper, and as the Doctor later points out, the very outdated fixtures and appliances. There's a sense of warmth inside the house to begin with at the very start, but that quickly fades away throughout the narrative as it becomes creepier and more eerie, with less and less rational answers for all of these ominous characteristics and happenings. The house looks fantastic, the seemingly endless maze-like layout making both us and the characters feel trapped inside the setting. The transition from light-hearted student antics and comedy to unsettling mystery and paranoia is pretty gradual, propelled by the Doctor himself, with the episode doing a great job building suspense as the house comes more and more alive, eventually becoming like a character of its own as it changes around the characters and boxes them in, increasing this sense of claustrophobia and entrapment, although it is basically 2006's Monster House. I think one of the best ways Knock Knock builds and establishes its horror atmosphere is through the use of sound design, to the extent that they even include a binaural version on the Blu-ray or iPlayer back in the day. The unsettling knocking noises within the walls echo throughout the house, adding an air of menace and mystery as they grow more frequent and more aggressive, constantly following the characters around and closing in around them. Like I said, it makes the very house itself feel alive and malevolent. This use of sound doing such a great job at contributing to the growing tension and suspense of the episode. It's a really striking and effective use of sound design to tell a story of its own, using every possible aspect of the medium to craft such a rich atmosphere. And of course, you have the superb body horror, with a terrifying reveal that the house is genuinely alive thanks to the dryads. Alien woodlice that consume and absorb the unfortunate victims who signed their lives away without even realizing. See, like I said, it's all in the terms and conditions. Pavel is the first such character disappearing before the credits, and then we get the incredible scene of Bill and Shireen finding him half absorbed into the wall, slowly being encased by the wood, completely unable to move or call for help. You know, it's kind of what Love and Monsters wishes it could have done. It's a really shocking moment that works so well as dark horror, even with Doctor Who's younger audience in mind. The mere concept of being absorbed into the building itself is grotesque and chilling, but seeing it in action makes it even more effective at ramping up the fear and tension of everything, especially when the walls just seal back up without a single trace of anything having happened to begin with. The dryads themselves provide a lot of the horror for me personally, especially when they start swarming around people with no escape. It just reminds me a lot of the scarab beetles from The Mummy, which have always terrified me, especially that one scene where one of them goes under the guy's skin, so naturally they do the exact same thing here, albeit a lot more toned down. So you know, thank God for that, because that scarab beetle scene scarred me for life. Something I do appreciate about the episode is how it splits the Doctor and Bill apart, each having their own companion of sorts to divide screen time and teach us more information. Bill finds herself heading towards the Forbidden Tower with her friend Shireen, placing Bill in more of an independent leadership role as her pursuit of some normality is completely upended with even more sci-fi adventures and danger. You can already see how she's being influenced by the Doctor when she instantly sprints into action and just gets on with it all, because she's learning how to thrive in the face of danger. And on the other side of the house, the Doctor investigates the mystery of the house with Harry.
You're talking like you've seen things like this before.
Obviously, the Doctor takes charge and uses his trademark curiosity and problem solving to quickly work out what's happening here, but Harry is useful too, discovering the patterns of disappearances every 20 years. Splitting the cast into two halves like this works really well here. It helps with the pacing and the drip feed of information, because you constantly cut between the two. However, I do wish we had a bit more of 12 and Harry, since I think they've bounced off each other quite well and have solid interactions. At the very least, it would have been nice to see Harry or any of the other roommates during the Monk trilogy, but you know, it is what it is. Oh, and by the way, Harry's death is particularly horrifying to me, his foot just falling through the step and getting caught like it's in a bear trap. It's really gruesome and not even really his fault, compared to Felicity, who actually manages to escape the house before it seals up, only to immediately walk backwards into a tree and get absorbed. More like Felicity, am I right? Throughout the episode, the characters consistently bump into the man simply known as the Landlord, who is played really well by David Suchet.
I take it back. You're fine. He's weird.
Right from his introduction, there's a sense of unease, but it's subtle enough that you at least want to give him a chance at the beginning, even if you are understandably suspicious of his offer and his odd mannerisms. He comes across as polite and eccentric, but obviously that fades away almost immediately when the characters actually sign the contract. The landlord's role as the house's caretaker gives him this creepy ability to just appear at will, almost like he himself is able to move through walls. There's a sense of gothic menace to the character of the landlord. He's very much the classic horror movie presence within the haunted house as he grows more sinister and we learn more about his abilities and the sacrifices to the dryads every 20 years. His motivations are a very slow burn, which only builds the tension more as you try to work out why he's doing this and how he's able to control the dryads, which is a skill established very early on as the eerie creaking and knocking sounds follow him throughout the house. There's an almost sociopathic emptiness to the landlord. He's completely and utterly numb to the horror and agony he's inflicting upon other people, even coldly threatening the Doctor that his older age won't stop the dryads from killing him. The landlord might not be a hugely memorable or powerful villain because, you know, he's just some guy. But within the lens of a haunted house horror narrative, he is pretty perfect, this puppet master pulling the strings and controlling all the events with ruthless efficiency, and a desire to carry out his self-imposed mission, which is something revealed pretty well at the end, albeit somewhat at the cost of the wider quality of the episode as a whole. Indeed, thanks to the split perspectives of the Doctor and Bill, we get the two-pronged reveal of the 20-year pattern of victims and who they're being sacrificed for.
Your daughter, she's here. She's in the house, isn't she?
When Bill and Shireen reach the top of the Forbidden Tower, they encounter Eliza, a very unsettling wooden person whose look is achieved really well through a mix of practical effects and digital touch-ups. It gives her a really distinct and otherworldly appearance, adding to the eerie tone, because she hits that perfect gap between looking human and looking alien. So it just feels kind of uncomfortable to look at her. The Doctor comes to the conclusion that this is the landlord's daughter, a figure he enigmatically hinted at towards the start of the story. The idea is that this child became ill, so the landlord gave her a few cute little rocks he found in the garden to make her happy. Of course, they turn out to be dryads which come to life and healed Eliza. This really recontextualizes the story, revealing the tragic nature of Eliza, who has been kept alive like this for decades by this point. Roughly about 70 years actually. She's not a monstrous villain, she actually becomes a bit of an emotional heart to the episode, a sympathetic figure who is simply the victim of the landlord's misguided love and desire to protect her and keep her safe. Which also reframes him as more than just a horrible villain. His motivations are obviously more complex than that, although, you know, he definitely is still a villain because he's killing all these people. This twist adds layers to the narrative, but it's yet another example of the misunderstood monster trope, even if they do try to add a bit more of a personal and emotional core to it. Because, yeah, when they reveal that the dryads have just been trying to help Eliza this whole time, it marks the fourth episode in a row where the alien threat is just misunderstood. It gets really boring by the time you
bored.
reach Knock Knock, feeling so repetitive and frustrating. Especially considering this is meant to be a new jumping on era. The Dryads are terrifying and monstrous in isolation, but after all the previous episodes, I just feel like you end up a bit disappointed that they're again actually just well-meaning aliens. If you're jumping on with Series 10, you would start to think that this is just the whole show, that none of the aliens are actually evil and they're all just misunderstood, which isn't exactly a good first impression to make. However, regarding the Dryads and Eliza, I really like how Bill thinks a bit more logically and corrects the Doctor's initial hypothesis, because, as it turns out, Eliza is actually the landlord's mother, rather than his daughter like he originally claimed. I love how moments like these show the great shared intelligence between the Doctor and Bill, a fixture of any good Doctor-companion duo because they're meant to be able to help each other in this way, working together to see the bigger picture as a team, and that's exactly what happens here, with the reveal that Eliza is actually the landlord's mother, since only a child would be rummaging through the garden and bringing his sick mother the things he finds. It makes the landlord a bit more of a tragic figure too, having spent his entire life like this in a desperate attempt to hold onto a loved one. Because it happened when he was so young and he couldn't let go.
If you could save the one who brought you into this world, wouldn't you?
I find the relationship between the landlord and Eliza pretty interesting because the Dryads weren't able to preserve Eliza's memories, so she completely forgot she was his mother and he was able to change their relationship to one where he's controlling her as a fatherly figure. It shows a theme of parental control and overprotectiveness, which was also shown, albeit more comedically, with the Doctor earlier in the episode as he didn't leave Bill to be with her friends. It speaks to the idea of empty nest syndrome, where parents experience emotional turmoil when their children leave home, because they start to feel loneliness, grief, and a loss of purpose after spending so long around their children, so they struggle to let go. That's why I find it clever that the episode centers around these uni students trying to find somewhere to live, because university is usually the main cause of emptiness syndrome, where the incoming students are excited at the idea of independence and freedom, but their parents suddenly find themselves so alone and struggle to accept it. So it's a clever use of Bill's university backstory to explore these kinds of themes.
It's a heartbreaking experience to leave one's charge behind all alone in the big wide world.
The landlord actually showcases both sides of this, since he treats Eliza like a daughter, denying her a sense of freedom and independence. But at the same time, he's turned himself into an example of why parents need to let their children move out into the real world. He's lived an emotionally stunted life, unable to move on or connect with others outside of this relationship with his mum. Clinging to the familiarity and safety of your childhood home and your parents can really restrict you and affect your development, because you have to let go and move forward, which the landlord hasn't allowed himself to do. He's trapped in this loop of behaviour to keep his mother alive whilst he still grows older, and they're both just so alone. And this need to let go is the defining part of Knock Knock's climax. The landlord's refusal to accept his mother's death has led to this horrific cycle within the house, and Eliza didn't know any better because of this lie she was fed about being his daughter and him knowing best.
You told me it was necessary, that we had no choice.
The Doctor has that great moment as he implores Eliza to end this cycle because there's no point in her surviving if she has to live this lonely life, hiding away and never being able to see the outside world. She finally remembers she's his mother and it's all down to her, because as the old saying goes, mother knows best. Like I mentioned, the episode touches upon themes of moving out and moving on as you grow older, and that's perfectly summed up with this line right here.
My son, leave my side at last. Go and see the world.
It's an emotional climax as Eliza embraces her son and allows the Dryads to take them both, finally ending this cycle and accepting the inevitability of her death in a poignant and peaceful resolution. I won't lie though, it is a bit of an overly fairy tale, sickly sweet ending that I think retroactively makes the episode weaker because it cheapens all that great horror stuff from earlier on. But it's still a pretty powerful ending that punctuates the core themes of the story and that need to let go no matter how difficult it is. It's an ending that reinforces Doctor Who's overall themes of compassion and understanding. The Doctor helping to heal emotional wounds instead of just defeating a villain, because the solution to this whole crisis is one of empathy instead of violence, allowing Eliza to preserve her dignity and love for the landlord with this act of compassion for the both of them, because she can see what the endless quest has done for her son, and he'll never be able to let go because of it, so she has to make that decision for him. The episode ends with the house collapsing and Eliza restoring the roommates with one final act of thanking the Doctor for helping her and finally putting her to rest. As always, it is a bit of a cop-out to undo every death in an episode, especially with how often it seems to happen with Moffat's era, even if he wasn't the one to write this particular episode. But I guess you can't exactly kill off Bill's entire friend group and just be able to move on as normal, so I suppose in this one instance, the whole everybody lives trope is actually warranted. In terms of the house being destroyed, I do actually prefer the original ending, where the house is actually restored after the death of Eliza and the landlord. It would have been revealed that the Doctor had chicanery'd the title deeds to take over control of the property, much like he'd previously done in Thin Ice.
Time Lord and landlord, yeah?
I think this is the better ending personally, especially because it does actually give Bill and her friends somewhere to live, allowing them to actually fly the nest and finish up that plot thread. It also would have established that Eliza still lingers on as a helpful if unseen spirit, giving the house a good feeling about it, instead of a creepy and bad one like before. I just find that cut ending more satisfying and better on an emotional level, but instead we get yet another vault scene essentially falling into the same trap as so many other Doctor Who series arcs, where they just set aside one scene each episode to just literally point out the plot and say, hey, look at this thing. At least this scene slightly moves things forward by further introducing a personality to whatever dwells within. I mean, hey, I guess it's better than nothing. Like a loading bar going from 10% to 11%. Basically, nothing actually changes, but at least it's a marginal step forward. Much like Smile and Thin Ice, I'm not really too impressed by Knock Knock. Series 10 really front-loaded itself with a run of weak episodes, and it's a huge shame considering the later quality of the series. Knock Knock starts off with a lot of promise. The horror atmosphere is built really well with the visuals and the incredible sound design. The dryads themselves are pretty creepy with how they swarm and scurry around so quickly, along with having some fantastic body horror with all the deaths as the house claims its victims. However, the misunderstood monster twist is a frustrating continuation of the trend at the start of Series 10, with all these episodes having the same kind of fake out. The landlord is a decent humour villain, with Suchet lending a lot of classic horror movie sinister charm to the character as he sacrifices all these uni students with a sense of soullessness and coldness. I think the roommate side characters are charming and enjoyable presences for the story, with some great interactions between each other, along with their interactions with the Doctor and Bill. Knock Knock has a lot of good moments, and the overall theme of moving on in life is handled well, but the episode just feels so milquetoast as an overall product. I end up feeling like it's pretty bland and not something I ever care to rewatch. Therefore, I would give Knock Knock a perfectly middle-of-the-road C grade on the tier list. It has a lot of good elements and it's made really well, but it just falls short again, and the ending kind of ruins the great horror atmosphere of the first half. It just feels a bit like wasted potential in my eyes, and it's definitely one of the weakest episodes of Series 10. But hey, at least that's definitely not the case for the next one. And oh look, perfect timing too. Funny that. Anyway, what do you think of Knock Knock? Was I too harsh and it's actually a great haunted house thriller, or does it actually need an eviction notice? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye. And I'd just like to give a special thank you to my Asbantium level patron Fallon Cortez, my Platinum level patron Matthew Burns, and my Gold level patrons Chris Douglas and Daniel Shillito. Thank you so much for your support.